let's talk a little bit about Cancun itself. If things go to plan, you're saying that perhaps we'll have a package of deals that might be able to go through concerning issues such as RED and finance, and then possibly some one or other kind of the more technical aspects. Is that kind of what we're looking to achieve there?
Yeah, I think it's parties up to now have adopted the kind of all or nothing approach, and of course there are connections between each piece of that puzzle. But it is not healthy. You can't have an all-or-nothing approach because you'll get nothing done. And so they should be looking at the package approach where you say, well, we can move on this area of work and we will finalize adaptation, and they should earmark that as an objective. In Cancun, we are signing off an agreement on adaptation. In Cancun, we can sign off an agreement on RED. In Cancun, we can already agree on the institutional arrangements for a finance mechanism. So build the little packages of agreement around that will lay the basis for the overall agreement. So we must always keep that in sight, that we're not just incrementally moving things along and there isn't the bigger agreement. We need to get the building blocks for that big agreement, and hopefully by COP17.
Okay, and of course you're from WWF South Africa, and you've been in the activist community there for many years. Do you think that we're going to see a mobilisation around COP17? Do you think there'll be a kind of civil society movement that's putting pressure on? Do you think that will even be required, or will we hopefully be arriving in South Africa with a deal to sign?
Well, listen, after the Copenhagen experience as the NGO movement, we've made it very clear to our government that we do not want NGOs to be treated in the way they were treated in Copenhagen. And so we really want to see this as a people's COP. And our NGOs across the board, whether they're in the environmental sector or in the social movements in the country, I think they are gearing up already to make that COP a really exciting one. It would require all kinds of action. It would require pressure, of course, and I know that many organizations will make sure that kind of pressure is seen visibly, in a sense, and it will require, I suppose, incentivizing those who are champions, because not everything is, not every party, not every country is bad in this process. And so we have to identify those champions and give them a little bit of incentive and push them along. And we do that kind of thing in South Africa. We'll really criticize those that need to be criticized, and there will be that. And we will want to encourage those who are making the right movements to continue doing that. So we're going to welcome all the NGOs in South Africa.
And I think Copenhagen really showed the importance of the host country and the role they can play, and that's not only in terms of how civil society movement were treated in Copenhagen, which was kind of roundly condemned, but also in terms of the chairing of the conference and the influence and the impact on trust. The Danish Prime Minister came in for a lot of criticism in terms of his handling of the conference. Are you confident that South Africa is going to provide a political venue that is kind of conducive to getting this agreement signed?
Look, and this is not because I'm biased, because I'm South African, and because we're playing, and the World Cup is there, and we're playing tomorrow in the opening. But South Africa has a history since our new democracy of being inclusive as much as possible. They try to be inclusive. They don't get it right all the time, but there's that kind of history of, we come from, the government now was a movement before, and there has to be an acknowledgement that movements play a critical role. Inclusivity plays a critical role, being transparent plays a critical role, and they were equally horrified at the way the Copenhagen, the COP15 was managed and handled. They were very critical about the way, draft texts had appeared before the time, etc. So I don't think they would be wanting to repeat any of that. I think they would really want this COP to set a massive standard for how COPs should be run as well. So we'll encourage them. The NGOs will push them along to make sure that happens as well.
And just before you finish, I've saved the most important question till last. You mentioned tomorrow we've got the World Cup kicking off. South Africa and Mexico playing, so Cancun to South Africa. It's a nice little undertone there. How are South Africa going to do in the World Cup?
Oh my goodness! Listen. Well, we believe that there's some kind of diplomatic agreement between the two COP presidencies that we're going to try and draw in tomorrow's match. So we'll score each, I hope, one each, so that there'll be the basis, the package agreement in Cancun, and the final agreement in South Africa signed. So we'll see.
We'll look forward to seeing the delegations following that game tomorrow. Okay, Tasneem, thank you very much for joining us. It's really interesting, and it's a nice positive message as we move forward to Cancun. And I'll hand back to our studio in the UK. Thank you.